I moved into what I thought was just another quiet suburban neighborhood, until I met Karen. She was the type who believed she controlled the entire block, complete with her fake HOA rules and self-appointed officers who strutted around like they owned the place. Too bad she had no idea who she was dealing with. I'm an FBI agent and I don't take intimidation lightly, but what came next was far more intense than she ever imagined. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from today. That morning started with a pounding on my front door so fierce it made the windows shake. Still half asleep, I hurried down the hall, thinking someone might be in danger. Through the peephole, I saw two people in matching uniforms, their jackets labeled HOA Police in big block letters. Their badges looked cheap, like something from a costume shop, but their expressions were dead serious. My heart raced faster than it should at sunrise. I cracked the door open. "Can I help you?" I asked. The taller man pointed at me. "We're here on official business," he said. "Your property has multiple violations. We need to inspect your garage." I felt frustration rise in my chest. "There's nothing in my garage that violates any rules," I replied. The shorter one, a woman with sharp eyes, snapped, "Don't make this difficult. We have authority from the HOA." That's when I realized something wasn't right. No mention of a warrant, no real police involvement. In a calm voice, I said, "I'm an FBI agent. If you have legitimate cause, show me the proper paperwork." The tall man smirked. "Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes." Before I could respond, I noticed movement behind them. Karen stood there with her usual smug grin, arms crossed, looking like she'd just won some petty neighborhood game. She'd always been loud, bossy, and quick to complain. I knew instantly this little inspection was her idea. Keeping my voice steady, I stepped onto the porch. "Karen, what's going on here?" She lifted her chin. "Just making sure the rules are followed," she said sweetly. "Your job doesn't make you special." The fake officers nodded in agreement. "We've had reports of strange activity in your garage," the woman added. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Strange activity? Like what?" Karen shrugged. "I've heard noises late at night. You could be storing something hazardous or worse." My jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous, and you know it. If there's a real issue, I'll cooperate. But this is harassment." The tall man pulled out a printed sheet of paper. It had no seal or signature, just text claiming I was under investigation by the HOA police. I took a deep breath. "That's not an official document. You have no legal right to enter my home." Karen sighed dramatically. "You sure you want to argue?" "I can add non-cooperation to your list of violations." I glared at her. "Since when does the HOA have its own police force? We have volunteers, not fake officers." The woman shoved a plastic-looking badge near my face. "We have new powers now." "Step aside," I shook my head. "Unless you come back with real law enforcement and a valid warrant, you're not setting foot inside." The man stepped forward. "Don't test us." My anger flared, but I held it in. As a federal agent, I knew better than to start a confrontation on my porch. Crossing my arms, I said, "If you try to come in, you'll be the ones facing charges." Karen smirked. "You can't threaten us. Everyone knows you think you're above the rules." Just then, my phone buzzed. My boss's name flashed on the screen. I'd never gotten a call from him this early. "One moment," I said, stepping back inside. The tall man shouted, "We're not finished here." But I ignored him. When I answered, my boss's tone was tense. "Get to the office immediately." "We have a situation." My stomach dropped. "Is this about a complaint?" I asked. He hesitated. "I'll explain in person." I ended the call and returned to the door. The fake cops and Karen were still standing there waiting. "I have to go," I said firmly. "We'll address this later." The woman shook her head. "If you leave, we'll mark you as uncooperative." Karen took a step closer. "You really want your neighbors to see you run away?" I exhaled sharply. "Karen, this is ridiculous." "You can't arrest me," she smiled. "I'm not arresting you." "They are." The tall man raised a pair of plastic zip ties ready to act tough. "Put those down," I said evenly. "Impersonating an officer is a federal crime. You understand that, right?" The woman grabbed her radio, but I doubted it connected to anything. Karen folded her arms. "You might want to listen. They have the power to write you up." I clenched my jaw. "A fake citation means nothing." The tall man waved the zip ties. "You want to find out if these are fake too?" That's when it hit me. They wanted to provoke me into overreacting. This was a setup. I took a slow breath. "Look, I have urgent business at my real job. You need to leave my property now." Karen shrugged. We'll be watching. The HOA has eyes everywhere. That made me laugh. The real HOA might, but you're not it. The man's face hardened. This is your last warning. Do whatever you need to, I said. Now get off my porch. They finally backed away, though the woman snapped a photo of me as they left. Karen gave me one last mocking smile. Smile for the records, my stomach turned. I waited until they were off my lawn, then shut the door hard. My phone buzzed again, another message from my boss. Hurry. I could feel the tension in every muscle. This was the last thing I needed before heading into what sounded like a real crisis. Karen's smug grin stayed in my mind as I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. At the end of the street, their fake cruiser sat with the lights off. Karen's car was gone, probably off to spread her version of the story. I took a deep breath, started the engine, and drove away, trying to shake off the chaos she'd caused. But something about my boss's tone told me the real trouble was only just beginning. As I pulled onto the main road, I couldn't stop checking my rearview mirror, half expecting that fake HOA patrol car to tail me. But it never showed. Still, I felt trapped between two nightmares, the bogus officers waiting to corner me at home and whatever was brewing at work. When I reached the FBI field office, I headed straight inside. My boss stood in the hallway looking tense. You took your time, he said sharply, motioning for me to follow him into his office. I closed the door behind us, heart pounding. He wasted no time. Local authorities are filing complaints about your so-called threatening behavior. What happened out there? I explained everything. The fake badges, the bogus citations, and Karen's role in orchestrating it all. He studied me for a long, silent moment before speaking. Well, we've got a problem, he said. The higher-ups have flagged this. There's talk of misconduct, and if it escalates, I can't protect you. My stomach dropped. But I'm innocent, I said firmly. Someone's framing me, he rubbed his eyes. I don't care if those people are real cops or not. There's paperwork saying you resisted a lawful inspection. It's nonsense, but it's official enough to cause trouble. Anger burned in my chest. Karen must have sent it. She's trying to ruin me, he sighed. Keep your cool and prove they're fake. Otherwise, an internal review is next. I nodded, even as panic tightened my throat. There was no easy way out. As I stepped out of his office, my phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number flashed across the screen. Better watch your step. We know who you are. My hand shook as I gripped the phone. They weren't just harassing me anymore, they were threatening me. I pushed through the rest of the day with that message echoing in my head. Even some coworkers started giving me wary looks like the rumors had already spread. Before heading home, an agent named Davis stopped me in the break room. Got a second? He asked quietly. Sure, I said. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Word is you're on thin ice. Watch your back, my chest tightened. You mean here or in my neighborhood? He frowned. Both, maybe. And I'd keep an eye on that Karen lady. She's bragging about getting you in trouble. By the time I left the building, the sun was sinking low. I drove home tense, half expecting to see those fake officers again. When I turned onto my street, there it was. A dark SUV parked near my house, its windows tinted black. I parked and watched for movement, but the engine was off and nobody got out. Forcing myself to stay calm, I went inside, locked the doors, and pulled the curtains. Almost immediately, my phone dinged with a new email from Internal Affairs. They wanted me to explain my altercation with the local security detail. I sank onto the couch, staring at the screen. Somehow, Karen had linked her fake patrol to official channels. My job was now in real danger. Even though those phony officers had left that morning, their shadow still lingered. And the Bureau was demanding answers? With Karen stirring up chaos at every turn, I could feel the storm tightening around me. Later that evening, I looked outside and saw the same fake HOA cruiser idling at the end of my street. My pulse spiked, but I forced myself to act normal. Inside, I peeked through the blinds. The car didn't move. I checked my messages, hoping for a response from the real HOA. Instead, I found a bounced email and a chilling voicemail. We know you're digging. Back off or this gets worse. That single line made it clear Karen wasn't working alone. The next morning, I tried calling the HOA number listed on an old newsletter, but it went straight to a recording about technical difficulties. Frustrated, I sent an email titled Urgent Possible Impersonation, but it bounced back as undeliverable. Even the neighborhood website was outdated with no mention of new security measures. It felt like every communication line had been cut off and Karen was sealing every exit. So I reached out to a local police contact, Officer Alvarez, a no-nonsense guy who occasionally coordinated with the bureau. Over the phone, I summarized the entire situation. Fake badges, false citations, and a neighbor running the show. Alvarez sounded skeptical but promised to run the license plate of their so-called HOA vehicle. If it's tied to a private firm, he said, they can't legally act as law enforcement. As I waited for his call, tension across the neighborhood grew thicker. People whispered behind fences, avoiding eye contact. Even neighbors I'd barely met were now treating me like the threat. One morning, Tamara, one of the few who still spoke to me, knocked on my door, pale and shaking. They left this on my porch, she said, holding up a notice demanding a fine for unapproved paint colors. I skimmed it immediately. Same fake format, same tone. Don't pay this, I told her. It's a scam. She looked terrified. I called the HOA, but the line's dead. What if it's real? I can't risk losing my house. Anger burned through me. It's not real, I said. I'll prove it. But she didn't look convinced. Meanwhile, things at work grew worse. My boss called me in again. Frustration etched on his face. More reports, more complaints, he said, tapping a folder full of paperwork. Care to explain? I showed him the fake citations, tried to outline the pattern, but he shook his head. If these people claim to be private security, I can't dismiss it. The higher-ups are watching and they're not happy. That left me cornered. Even if the HOA police were imposters, their noise had reached Washington. Every day I dreaded an email or phone call putting me on official suspension. One evening, I pulled into my driveway and saw Karen standing in hers, arms crossed, smiling like she'd already won. I walked up to her, my pulse pounding. We need to talk, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. You set those fake officers on me and now you're scaring innocent neighbors. Why? She smirked. It's not personal. People forget we have standards. I'm just making sure we enforce them. By threatening everyone? I asked. She shrugged. They don't seem threatened. They pay the fines and follow the rules. It works. My anger simmered. What's your endgame, Karen? She tilted her head slightly. Endgame? I'm just cleaning up the neighborhood. You're the one refusing to cooperate. Before I could answer, one of her fake officers walked over, giving me a cold stare. Move along, he said. We have business with Miss Karen. I clenched my jaw. You have no legal authority here. He raised his flimsy badge. We're all the authority we need. Rather than take the bait, I stepped back. Karen gave me one last smug look before they walked off together, leaving me fuming in the street. That night, I searched through old HOA records from my filing cabinet. Buried inside was a reference to a proposed security program that was never approved, and Karen's name was listed as one of its main advocates. The original plan for a neighborhood security team had been scrapped long ago when residents decided they didn't want a military-style force in their quiet community. But now it seemed Karen had built her own version, using intimidation instead of approval. A chill crept down my spine. If she could take over an entire neighborhood, maybe she had powerful allies, people who could cause real problems for me at the FBI. A few days later, Alvarez finally called back. That plate belongs to a private security firm, he said, his tone more certain this time. But there's no record of a contract with your HOA. They're operating without authorization. I exhaled in disbelief. So they're not real cops, I said, feeling relief tangled with anger. But how do I prove Karen's behind it? He hesitated. I can't dig deeper without an official complaint on record, and so far there isn't one. My patience snapped. This is an official complaint. They threatened me on my own property. Alvarez sighed. I believe you. But unless other neighbors back you up, it's just your word against theirs. That's when it hit me. Karen had built her power on fear. No one wanted to challenge her, not when it meant facing those fake enforcers. I realized I was on my own unless I could gather real evidence. Meanwhile, the Bureau's patience was wearing thin. Internal Affairs called me in for a short meeting. My supervisor asked sharp, suspicious questions about my so-called aggressive behavior toward local authorities, quoting from a report filled with half-truths. I defended myself, but she only tapped her pen on the folder and said, "We're reviewing all angles." My chest tightened as I left her office. Even though I was telling the truth, the constant complaints were painting me as a problem. Karen was winning, using fake officers and forged citations to ruin my credibility. The only person still in my corner was Tamara, but even she was too afraid to speak up formally. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I found an envelope taped to my front door. It bore a fake HOA seal and accused me of violating Community Ordinance 301. The penalty was a steep fine or corrective measures. That was it. I slammed the envelope on the kitchen table and called Karen, leaving a furious voicemail demanding she stop her harassment. An hour later, my phone rang from a blocked number. "Don't threaten Karen again," a voice hissed. "We know your boss. We can make your life very difficult." The line went dead. I froze, anger and dread twisting together. Whoever these people were, they weren't just pretending anymore. They wanted me to believe they were untouchable. That night, I stared out the window at the quiet street. Porch lights glowed softly, lawns swayed in the breeze. It all looked peaceful, but I felt trapped inside a nightmare with Karen pulling every string. My phone chimed with an email from a colleague. "Heads up, internal review might start soon. Rumors are spreading. Perfect. Another storm coming my way." I turned off the lights, wondering how much longer I could hold out, and what Karen's next move would be. Even though I'd found the security connection, I still had no hard proof linking her to the operation. My only lead was the plate Alvarez traced, but without neighbors brave enough to step up, I was standing on shaky ground. The pressure from work only made things worse. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me, sometimes from suspicious neighbors, sometimes from that unmarked SUV at the corner. One afternoon, I decided to run to the store, hoping a short drive would clear my mind. As I pulled out, I spotted a shadow moving behind Karen's hedge, someone watching. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just harassment anymore, it was surveillance. Halfway to the store, my phone rang from another unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A deep, gravelly voice warned, "Stop digging, or else." The call ended. I sat there gripping the wheel, the threat echoing in my ears. When I got back home, I found a crumpled flyer under my windshield. It read, "HOA police volunteers needed." The meeting place? Karen's address. At the bottom, a membership fee to cover uniform costs. My hands trembled. If people actually fell for this, she'd have her own personal army patrolling the neighborhood. I snapped a photo for evidence, tore the flyer up, and locked my door. Through the blinds, I saw Karen's window curtain shift. She was watching me, but I didn't care anymore. I spread my notes across the dining table, trying to piece everything together. Dozens of fake warnings, fines, and citations. Some against me, others Tamara had received. The pattern was obvious now. Karen had dismantled every real HOA process and replaced it with her own false authority. But the bigger question was why, and who was helping her. The threatening voice on the phone didn't sound like any neighbor. It carried real menace, the kind that came with resources and protection. That night, Tamara came over holding a thick envelope. "I found old newsletters," she said, setting them down. "Karen took over the events committee last year. We thought she just wanted to plan block parties. Now I think she was setting up something bigger." I flipped through the papers, shaking my head. She's been planning this for years. Tamara pointed to a 6-month-old note. "Local security guidelines will be enforced for the safety of all residents." It bore Karen's signature and a vague reference to third-party officials. Tamara's hand trembled as she asked, "Do you think any of this is legal?" I shook my head. No, but nobody's stopping her. The real HOA board had vanished. The police refused to act without hard proof, and the FBI was breathing down my neck. I was boxed in from every side. The next morning, I decided to bring everything to Alvarez in person. Maybe if he saw the scope of this mess, he'd realize how deep it went. I stacked the flyers and citations into a folder, then drove to the station. The entire way there, my chest felt tight. At one stoplight, a black sedan with tinted windows lingered behind me long after the light turned green. My pulse quickened. Was I being followed? When I parked at the station, the sedan turned down a side street and disappeared. Inside, Alvarez ushered me into a cramped office. "Sorry for the mess," he said. "We're short on space." I set the folder on his desk and explained everything. Karen's flyers, the fake officers, the money collection scheme. Alvarez flipped through the documents, whistling. This is bigger than I thought, he said. But how do we tie it to her? I leaned forward. Her name's on multiple papers. If you need witnesses, I can find them. He frowned. They'll need to sign their statements, and most of them are probably too scared to do that. I slumped in my chair. He was right. My neighbors were terrified, and I couldn't blame them. For all I knew, Karen really did have connections that made her untouchable. I asked again about the SUV. Alvarez checked his computer. Registered to a private security firm tied to an out-of-state company. Looks like a shell. Hard to trace, a dead end. I thanked him anyway and left. On my way out, my phone buzzed, a message from my boss. We need to talk. Be here first thing tomorrow. My stomach dropped. Maybe Karen had filed another complaint. Maybe the fake HOA had sent another report to damage my record. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I heard a car door slam outside. Peeking through the blinds, I saw a figure standing by the curb staring at my house. For a moment, I thought it was Karen, but the silhouette was taller, broader. After a pause, the person got back into their vehicle and drove away, leaving me shaken and wide awake. By morning, I dragged myself to the bureau, heart pounding. My boss stood by his office door, arms crossed, waiting. This is bad, my boss muttered, motioning for me to step inside. I sat down, my stomach tight with dread. I've got a dozen complaint forms right here, he said, dropping a thick file onto his desk. All from your neighborhood, accusing you of threats, misconduct, even property damage. My throat went dry. Property damage? That's ridiculous. He rubbed his temples, frustration etched into his face. I know, but it's all here, signed statements, official addresses. It looks legitimate, my mind raced. Karen must have pressured the neighbors into signing whatever she put in front of them. Now it seemed my entire community was turning against me. I believe you, my boss said quietly, but the higher-ups see a pattern. This could get worse unless we uncover the truth fast. I fought to steady my voice. Give me a chance to prove these people are impersonators. They're not recognized by any real authority. He hesitated, then nodded. All right. But we can't protect you forever. Internal Affairs is already watching. The silence between us was heavy. I thanked him for his patience, though I could feel time slipping away. As I left his office, desperation gripped me. Karen was choking my career with her manipulative schemes. At this pace, I'd be suspended before I could expose her lies. I couldn't stop thinking about how easily she'd turned neighbors against me, through fear, bribes, or intimidation. Whatever she used, it worked. By the time I drove home, I was mentally drained. That same fake police cruiser was parked outside my house again, lights off, engine idling. I stepped out of my car and walked straight toward it. The window rolled down an inch and a cold voice hissed, "Back off, or you'll regret it." My pulse pounded. The threat was real, but so was my determination. Karen's empire of fear had to fall. My job was hanging by a thread, my reputation shattered, but I still needed solid proof tying her to those fake enforcers. The stakes had never been higher. When I arrived at FBI headquarters the next morning, my nerves were shot. My boss had warned me there'd be an official inquiry into my so-called misconduct. Weeks of stress, false reports, and harassment had left me exhausted. Inside the lobby, people's eyes followed me. Rumors had spread, and it felt like I was wearing a target. I forced myself to stay calm. Truth was my only defense. In the conference room, a panel of senior agents waited. My boss stood near the back, arms crossed, looking grim. An older agent spoke first. "We're here to review multiple complaints against you. Claims of threats, defiance of local authorities, and repeated insubordination." "Those authorities are imposters," I said firmly. "Their badges are fake. The HOA never approved them." A steely-faced woman lifted a file. "We have sworn statements from 10 neighbors who say otherwise. They claim you intimidated them." I clenched my fists. "I have documents proving this is a setup. The so-called HOA police are part of an unlicensed private security firm." The panel exchanged cautious glances, but before anyone could respond, the door opened. Karen walked in. Dressed in a sharp suit and carrying a sleek briefcase, she looked nothing like the suburban bully I knew. My heart lurched. What is she doing here? "Miss Garrett has submitted evidence on behalf of the local enforcement group," one agent said. Karen smiled politely. "Good morning. I represent the interests of our community. I'd like to clarify a few points." My boss shot me a surprised look. He clearly hadn't expected her. Karen opened her briefcase and spread neatly labeled folders across the table. These contain reports from our neighborhood watch, noise complaints, suspicious activity, even alleged break-ins tied to this agent's address. That's a lie. I protested. Unfazed, she continued. We invited him to cooperate with our volunteer police program, but he refused. We only wanted to keep the neighborhood safe. I turned to the panel. She's manipulating you. Karen started this operation to intimidate residents and collect fake fines. I've seen the bogus forms myself. The woman on the panel asked, Do you have those forms with you? My heart sank. Not physically. I emailed them. Karen interrupted smoothly. We've found no record of that. Perhaps the agent is mistaken. My anger flared. She was twisting the story perfectly, framing me as the aggressor. Then came the blow that made everything click. The senior agent turned to Karen. Before we continue, please disclose your family connection. Karen nodded politely. Yes, my uncle is the deputy director of this bureau. I tried to resolve this quietly, but when the situation escalated, I had to involve him. A chill ran through me. That connection explained everything. How she shut down HOA communications, how complaints reached my superiors instantly, how she seemed untouchable. One panelist spoke carefully. Given her connection, we'll ensure neutrality. But these allegations remain serious. Agent, can you provide concrete proof? I steadied my breath. The security firm she uses isn't licensed. Several neighbors have admitted they're being extorted, but they're terrified to testify. Karen folded her hands and said sweetly, My family and I simply care about safety. We only encourage good citizenship. Every word dripped with deceit. I realized she had deeper ties within the agency than I ever imagined. The meeting ended with a promise of a full investigation into both me and her organization. But as I walked out, it felt like I'd already lost. Karen passed me in the hallway, smiling coldly. Better watch your step, she whispered. I bit back my fury. My boss caught up, his expression grim. I didn't know she was related to the deputy director, he said quietly. This complicates everything. I know, I exhaled, my voice heavy. He looked at me with sympathy. You're not out of danger yet. Do yourself a favor, my boss said firmly. Stay calm and gather every piece of evidence you can. We'll need more than hearsay to stop this. I left the building in a daze, trying to process the shock. Karen's uncle wasn't just some bureaucrat, he was one of the highest-ranking officials in the FBI. That meant she had access to influence and resources I couldn't begin to match. If she could manipulate my neighbors so easily, what could she do with her uncle's power backing her? My knees felt weak as I reached my car. There was no guarantee Internal Affairs would believe me now, not when Karen had official channels on her side. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, fighting the panic rising in my chest. My badge suddenly felt heavier than ever. I might be part of the Bureau, but I was up against someone who had the Bureau itself in her pocket. My only chance was to expose Karen's fake security operation with undeniable proof. But doing so could cost me everything. My job, my reputation, maybe even my safety. I drove home from that inquiry feeling hollow. Karen's reach had climbed all the way to the top, and I was now under an even darker cloud of suspicion. My boss tried to reassure me, but even his words carried little hope. As I pulled into my driveway, I felt every nerve on edge, scanning the street for that fake cruiser or the tinted SUV. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing softly, and for a moment I let myself hope for one peaceful night. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Tamara. They're at my door. I'm scared. My heart jumped. I sprinted toward her house, keeping low in the shadows. Sure enough, the so-called HOA officers were back, parked right in front of her place, engine running. Behind a hedge, I saw them pounding on her door. The taller one shouted, "Open up or we'll mark this as another violation." Anger flared through me. These bullies had gone too far. I stepped out from behind the hedge and cleared my throat loudly. One of them turned, scowling. "You again?" he muttered, reaching for something on his belt. "I'm FBI," I said, my voice cutting through the night. "This is intimidation." "Leave her alone," the other officer smirked and lifted his phone. "That line won't save you anymore. We've got friends in high places." The irony hit me like a punch. They were openly bragging about their connection to Karen's network. Tamara cracked the door open, trembling. "Please, just go," she begged. One of the men shoved a form at her. "Sign this. It's a statement saying your friend's been harassing the neighborhood." My blood boiled. "She's signing nothing," I barked. The taller one shoved me hard, sending me stumbling down the porch steps. Before I could recover, he pulled out plastic zip ties, sneering. "Careful, Agent. One wrong move and we'll file assault charges." I met his gaze coldly. "Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime. You'll regret this." He pointed a finger at me. "You won't get that chance." The threat in his tone was unmistakable. Then a voice called from behind us. "What's going on here?" I turned. Relief washed over me. It was Alvarez, the local cop I'd spoken to before. He must have been off duty, checking on the area. The fake officers stiffened. Alvarez stepped closer, badge visible. "Ma'am," he said to Tamara, "are these men trespassing?" She nodded quickly, eyes glistening. "Yes, they won't leave." Alvarez glanced at me. "Got your message about suspicious activity," he said. "Took me a minute to get here." He faced the officers. "Let's see some ID." The taller man flashed his fake badge, but Alvarez didn't even blink. "That's not official," he said flatly. "Driver's license, now." The men hesitated, glancing at each other. "We're authorized by the HOA," one stammered. "You're not authorized to threaten anyone," Alvarez shot back. "Step away from the door. This is private property." He radioed for backup, and both imposters turned pale. The tall one sneered at me one last time. Then they bolted for their cruiser. Alvarez and I followed, but they sped off before we could stop them. He caught their license plate number and sighed. "We'll see what we can do, but this might get complicated." Tamara was shaking when Alvarez left. I helped her inside and she sank onto her couch, her voice trembling. "They wanted me to say you were harassing everyone," she whispered. "They said if I didn't sign, they'd take me to court." "It's a bluff," I told her gently. "Their paperwork means nothing. We'll prove it," but inside I wasn't so sure. Karen's reach had already stretched into the FBI itself. Nothing seemed off limits to her anymore. Tamara agreed to give Alvarez a full statement, which might finally help us turn the tide. By the time I walked home, the night was quiet again, but my nerves were shot. Crickets echoed down the street, porch lights flickered, and then my phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number. "You're out of time. Cooperate or lose everything." My chest tightened. They were doubling down, desperate to scare me off. I locked my door, sat on the couch, and tried to steady my breathing. Karen's grip was massive, strengthened by her family's position in the bureau. If I wanted to stop her, I needed hard proof, something even her uncle couldn't bury. The next morning, I found a note in my mailbox. "Meeting tonight at the community center. Be there." No name, no signature. It reeked of a trap, but it also might be my best shot. If Karen was gathering people, I could expose her in front of everyone. Record her lies. Maybe even turn the tide. Still, a part of me knew this could be the end game. If I failed tonight, I might lose everything. My job, my home, even the trust of what used to be my community. As evening fell, I tucked a small recorder into my jacket and charged my phone to full. I texted Alvarez where I was going. His reply came fast. "Be careful. Call if it gets ugly." I took a deep breath and headed out. The community center was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the room. Karen stood at the front, papers in hand, surrounded by neighbors displaying, "We support the HOA" signs. Two of her fake officers stood nearby like guards. I slipped into a seat in the back, heart pounding. Karen stepped to the podium, her voice smooth and falsely cheerful. "Good evening, everyone," and I knew this was it. "Thank you for coming," Karen began, her voice dripping with authority. "As you all know, our community has faced a few challenges lately. Rule violations, safety concerns, and general disorder. That's why I took the initiative to create our new HOA police, to protect our homes and preserve our peace." A few supporters clapped, but most people just looked uneasy. I could feel the tension thickening in the room. Karen continued. "Unfortunately, we've had some resistance from a few individuals who don't respect our community standards." Her eyes flicked toward me for a moment before she smiled again and gestured at the fake officers standing nearby. "Thanks to our dedicated volunteers, we've already issued several citations for noise complaints, unkempt lawns, and suspicious activities. It's all about keeping our streets safe and maintaining property values. That was it." I couldn't stay silent anymore. "That's a lie," I said, loud enough to cut through the room. Heads turned. Karen's smile froze as her eyes locked on mine. "Excuse me?" she said sharply. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Your so-called HOA police aren't legitimate. They're part of a private security group with no authority to issue fines or citations. You're running a scam, Karen." Gasps rippled through the crowd. One of the fake officers took a step toward me, but I held up my badge. "Federal agent, touch me and you'll regret it," he froze. I pushed forward. "These men are nothing but hired muscle. Karen's been intimidating neighbors, collecting fake fines, and threatening people with eviction. It's illegal." Karen's face flushed red. "You're just angry because you can't follow the rules like everyone else," she snapped. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd saved. "This is proof that your so-called HOA police are unlicensed and unauthorized. The company they work for has no contract with this neighborhood." Murmurs spread through the crowd. One man stood, his voice trembling. "Karen, and is that true? Are they not real security?" Karen faltered, her confidence slipping. "They're volunteers," she stammered. "Volunteers don't have the right to detain people or issue fines," I said. "You've been fabricating violations to steal money from your neighbors." I pointed toward the stack of papers beside her. "Let's see those citations. I bet they're all fake." People surged forward, demanding to see the documents. Karen's hands shook as she tried to pull them away, but one neighbor grabbed a sheet and held it up. "This doesn't look official at all. No seal, no signature." Karen snatched at the paper. "That's confidential," she shouted, but no one was listening anymore. Phones came out, cameras flashing as people photographed the evidence. Then one of her fake officers backed away. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered before bolting out the door. Just then, Officer Alvarez entered the hall, his uniform crisp and expression firm. "Everyone stay calm," he announced. "We're conducting an investigation into unauthorized security operations and possible extortion." Karen's face went white. She tried to recover, but her words stumbled. Alvarez stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me for questioning." Karen flared in panic. "This is harassment. I have connections, you can't do this." But no one came to her defense. The illusion of authority she'd built had completely shattered. Alvarez cuffed her and glanced my way. "Good work," he murmured. As Karen was led out, the room filled with whispers and relief. Neighbors began apologizing, some near tears, admitting they'd been pressured into following her fake rules. Tamara approached me, eyes glistening. "You did it," she whispered. I managed a tired smile, the adrenaline still coursing through me. The nightmare was finally ending. In the days that followed, the investigation confirmed everything. Karen had been pocketing HOA fines for herself. Her uncle, a high-ranking FBI official, denied any involvement but quietly resigned under scrutiny. The fake HOA police disbanded, and the security company faced charges for unlawful enforcement. Weeks later, my boss called me into his office. He studied me for a moment before finally smiling. "Turns out you were right all along," he said. "Internal affairs cleared you. Karen's actions were illegal, and every complaint filed against you has been withdrawn. Welcome back." Relief hit me like a wave. I'd managed to protect my career, my home, and the people around me. As I walked out of the office, I took a deep breath. The air felt lighter. My neighborhood was peaceful again. No fake cops, no bogus fines, no fear. Just a community, finally free from one woman's control. I couldn't help but smile. I'd survived the storm and brought down the woman who thought she could turn a quiet suburb into her own kingdom.